Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And something truly astonishing is happening. Someone in the SNP has had a really good idea. It's sensible, and you all want to agree that it should happen. I know. It's Joanna Cherry, one of the very few sensible members of the SNP. She is trying to split the role of Dorothy Bain, trying to split those two roles as legal advisor to the government and Scotland's top prosecutor. She could be poacher and gamekeeper, as it were. Obviously, a conflict of interest could happen. And so Joanna Cherry is saying that this role needs to be split. Now, the Scottish Government don't have the power because it came under the Scotland Act, so it has to happen at Westminster. And she's introducing a private member's or a 10-minute bill, whichever it is, to try and get this pushed through. She's likely to get a lot of support on both sides, on all sides of the House, so it's likely to happen. It will really annoy Dorothy Bain because she's going to lose half her power, and she will have to decide whether to remain the legal advisor to the government on one hand, or Scotland's top prosecutor on the other. She'll probably stay as prosecutor because that's a political appointment. That's there. She stays there until she wants to stop. Whereas if she's in the government and they lose, she's out. So she'll probably stay as the prosecutor. But it is a sensible act. And we are going to take a look at it right now. So Joanna Cherry raises the Salmond Affair and Operation Branchform as MPs prepare to strip the Lord Advocate of her dual role. And I think it's sensible. I mean, I'm not saying that she's overworked. Some people do like a lot of work and whatever. But I think it is that conflict of interest. How can you be the one who's going to say that this needs to be prosecuted if the people you're prosecuting is your own government that you sit as part of? Obviously, conflicting. You cannot do it. The SNP in Edinburgh has failed to act for years and years to tackle the conflict of interest in the role held by Dorothy Bain, who's both a member of the government and the country's top prosecutor. Now, to be fair, this isn't a Scottish Government issue. This was the UK government, this was Westminster, when they set up the Scotland Act. Nobody foresaw the problem. It's just overlooked. Should have been sorted at the time, and it wasn't. The Scottish Government is to be finally forced to act to split the dual role of the Lord Advocate after years of the SNP sitting on their hands over what many see as a clear conflict of interest. One of the main flaws in the devolution setup is the fact that the Lord Advocate acts as both the head of Scotland's prosecution service, the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, and the Scottish Government's top legal advisor, which is a ministerial role with a seat in cabinet meetings. And so, this wasn't the Scottish Government that set this up, you understand. This was from the very original foundation of the Scottish Government via the Scotland Act. That's where it should have been done. So I think in this case it is unfair to blame progressive, because there's several Scottish governments over the time. However, they could have changed it by going back to Westminster and asking Westminster to do it, and they never have. But the Labour government didn't do it. Coalition governments have never done it. The SNP's never done it. It's finally going to happen. Despite promising reforms, the issue was never dealt with by Alex Salmond or Nicola Sturgeon during their time in office, and Humza Yousaf equally showed no desire to tackle the problem. And now Rebel SNP MP Joanna Cherry has acted to force the decision with the full backing of cross-party MPs at Westminster. She introduced a private member's bill which would allow Holyrood to split the role of Lord Advocate into two separate jobs, which it must be. One being the legal advisor to the government, the cabinet position, and one being the head of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, the prosecutor. Sensible design. Well done, Joanna Cherry, for seeing a problem and acting to solve it without having to keep pushing any kind of independence issue on it, without having to push any kind of division, by using your position as an MP in Westminster to force a change for good in Scotland. It doesn't happen often, and so well done to her. She's introduced a private member's bill which would allow this role to be split into two jobs, as I mentioned. Speaking at Westminster on Wednesday, Miss Cherry said concern about potential conflicts in the role of Lord Advocate has increased in recent times because of some of the very high-profile cases. This includes the Scottish Government's handling of the complaints against Alex Salmond, the malicious scandal in relation to the prosecution over the takeover of Rangers Football Club, and the police investigation into SNP finances. And that's for the Rangers one. An awful lot of that is people within Celtic having their oar, sticking their oar because it suited them to do it, and the SNP being firmly wedged right up the anal crack of the Celtic Board of Directors. Anyway, she added that it was not a new problem with the previous Labour executive under Jack McConnell, Henry McLeish and Donald Dewar also running into issues surrounding the Lockerbie trial. There was considerable disquiet back in 2000 that the Lord Advocate was performing the role of politician, prosecutor and judge maker. So it is an old problem. It's a 25-year-old problem. Day one. It's a 0-day issue that should have been sorted a long time ago and no one bothered doing it. But hey-ho, it is what it is. The triple role was removed in 2002 and judges in Scotland are now appointed by an independent panel. But Scotland remains almost unique in Europe in having a chief prosecutor who's also a member of the government. But they like it that way because if they can bring everything in to control of the executive, then they can have more or less a one-party state where everything is controlled by the Politburo in the same way as the Soviet Union did, or as China does, or as North Korea does. They don't have the three pillars of state. They have one pillar of state, a monolithic state, and that is always a bad, bad thing. Miss Cherry added, elsewhere in the UK and the Republic of Ireland, the two roles are held by different people. This avoids any possible conflict of interest or the perception of one. In England, there's an Attorney General who's a member of the government of the day, and quite separately, a Director of Public Prosecutions, who is appointed by the public appointment process, completely independent of government. Of course, there is a third office of the Lord Chancellor, who performs some constitutional functions, and experts advising the Scottish Government may want to think about something akin to that third role for some of the Lord Advocate's functions under the Scotland Act. And that's fine. If you have more and more people doing the broken down bits, each part can become more discreet and therefore more, how can we say, inspectable, where they have limited power, but they can use their power, but people can see whether they've misused their power far easier. The Edinburgh South West MP said both Scottish and UK ministers have accepted that there is a case for separating the two roles. I think everyone can accept that there is, while her bill has cross-party support, and the bill was introduced with support from members of all parties, including the SNP and Alba, as well as the Scottish Secretary, Alistair Jack, and his Labour shadow, Ian McMurray. So you've got Tory, Labour, SNP, Alba. You guarantee there'll be Lib Dems, there'll be the Green, whatever. They'll all agree to it. It will go through. Ms Cherry said, I hope that the existence of cross-party support means this private member's bill has a chance of becoming law, leaving the final decision on the role of Scotland's law officers where it should be, with the Scottish Parliament. Correct. Not with outside forces, effectively. And, of course, you still then have the prosecutor will be an independent person, not a political lackey who's sitting there saying, I can't prosecute the government because I'm part of the government, which Dorothy Bain can do. Not saying she will, but she can. Anyway, I shall stop there, come up, and we'll round off. But it is nice to see that sometimes the system works. And if you have someone who is not completely mad and is capable of doing good, doesn't matter what party they're from, does it? Well done to Joanna Cherry. Coming up. Isn't that weird? A video about the SNP, and I wasn't ridiculing them, moaning about them. You got one of them actually doing something good. It should be the way. We shouldn't have to do all the moans, but I do. But occasionally, very occasionally, you find that little diamond, don't you? You find the pearl. And that little story about Joanna Cherry is today's little pearl. Well done. Well done to her. Hope it goes through. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. Press like, share the video. Please leave a comment. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.